Arabic Qahwa, the Quranic Arabic Learners Podcast, brought to you by fluentarabic.net, the best place to find tutorials, resources, and learning advice for classical Arabic. Visit the blog at fluentarabic.net.
ومن ينفق الساعات في جمع ماله مخافة فقر فالذي فعل الفقر
وإذا ظلمت فإن ظلمي باسل مر مذاقته كطعم العلقم.
ألم تعلمي أني إذا الضيف نابني وعز القرى أقري السديف المسرهدة.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to episode number 5, and it has been an exciting journey so far. We've had some great conversations, so if you haven't listened to the previous episodes, please make sure you do. And today we have found another very interesting person for you to talk to, inshallah. This is Sheikh Bilal, all the way from the United States. Sheikh Bilal, he has a very interesting story. He did a double degree in Arabic and Islamic studies from the State University of Ohio, the Ohio State University. Am I saying it right?
That is correct, yes.
Yeah. And after that, he wanted to go a bit more in depth with his Arabic. So he decided to go to Jordan, where he spent another 1 year. And then he went to Egypt to spend some more time, mashallah. So that is a very interesting journey, Sheikh Bilal. And I want to ask you, first of all, I want to thank you for finding the time to join us and share your experience with us. And then I want to ask you, what really inspired you to make this awesome journey?
Well, first, let me say wa alaikum salam, and thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here and kind of tell you my story. But sorry, what was your question there?
I want to know what really inspired you to undertake this amazing journey of learning Arabic. MashaAllah, you remind me of the old days of the ulama, where they used to travel and learn and spend a lot of time. MashaAllah.
Allahu Akbar. I don't have that makan, but who knows? Maybe one day, inshallah, we can both occupy. Ya Rab, Ameen. But if I guess to start from the very beginning, my kind of intro into religiosity, into Islam started when I was in my teens. It's kind of a personal story, but I'll make it a bit short. Basically, one day my dad was upset with me, and he asked me to go pray Maghrib, and I ended up praying Maghrib, and then the day after I prayed it again, and then I was only actually praying one prayer at that time. I was not the most practicing Muslim in the world, but slowly I began to add more prayers, and I began to ask myself, after I finally was completing all 5 prayers, why do I want it? Why am I doing this? And so I began to study kind of Islam on my own. And then one thing led to another, and I was studying, I was doing my spiritual prayers, and I was doing my my studying on my own. Then I went to university, and then I began to study Arabic. And it was around that time that I began to become more interested in studying kind of the traditional Islamic sciences. And so I began to study with local shuyukh in my community. And finally, after I had kind of exhausted my local resources, that's when I kind of endeavored to go overseas, and then the rest is kind of history from there. So. MashaAllah.
And I want to ask you about your experience with language immersion in Jordan. Now, a lot of people, they think about undertaking a journey similar to yours, but they have a lot of concerns. How is it going to be, living in a country where probably a lot of people don't understand English, and in the beginning you're not able to speak Arabic? So how long did it take you to be able to communicate? How was it in the beginning? Was it hard? How was your experience?
In the beginning, it's brutal because, when you first arrive, you don't know anything, and no one likes to be in a conversation or, in a group of people when they're talking, and you only understand like 10%. And so you kind of have to suck it up and just deal with it in the beginning. But I would say after about 3 months, I got the grip of kind of basic conversation, and I could contribute a little bit, here and there. But again, it took time, perseverance, and I would recommend to kind of those people who are interested in kind of endeavoring, into this field, that it takes a lot of patience, because especially when you're a Western Muslim and you're jumping to the East, It's quite difficult because the lifestyle change is quite severe. It's quite drastic. In the West, things are quite organized, quite bureaucratic. Everything kind of has its place. But when you go to the Muslim world, it's a bit chaotic to say the least. So to those Muslims that want to endeavor, I would say you have to be patient. That's the key, and you really, really have to want it. You really have to want to be the talib al-ilm. You really want to strive to be like the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you really want to have to get closer to God. And you will actually kind of begin to see, I hate to say it, people kind of peel off. You'll see, your group is quite big. Maybe when you start, there'll be like 10 of you, 15 of you, but some people can't hack it. The lifestyle is too difficult. When no one wants to be kind of embarrassed when they're speaking a new language and you're constantly making mistakes. And so you'll slowly start to see people peel off, and eventually it'll be a small group of you. But that group is absolutely priceless. Those people you meet, those men that endeavor to stay are the men that this ummah actually needs, especially in the West, because we have to go back and teach. And we survived, and we need to go back and kind of give back to our communities. In fact, kind of one of the examples I give is that the Muslim world, for us Western Muslims, is like a gold mine or a gem mine. And we have to go and get as many precious gems as possible. And when we go back, we have to give it to our community. Because ultimately, you can't carry everything back, but you can carry some of it back. And that's kind of our job. So, yeah. Hope that answered the question.
Yeah. Very, very good points you make there. I just want to share with you my short experience with language immersion. When I was a student in Malaysia, during the holidays, I went to Oman for the same purpose, to spend some time and try to get a lot of practice speaking Arabic. And subhanAllah, I was just asking, when you go to a country, you don't really know, what to expect, how to get this experience. Like, you don't know anyone.
Exactly.
How do you just go and, make friends and, get a lot of practice with people you don't know and a language you can't speak yet? So I was just, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I need to make a way. And it worked out, subhanAllah. There was this family that we knew back from India because they visit us regularly. So they found out I was there, and he came, he picked me up, and he said, this is not how you're going to learn Arabic. What you need to do is you need to stay in a masjid. And he put me in a masjid in some village in Oman. And with a guy,
wow.
with a guy who did not speak one word of English. I'm not exaggerating.
Oh man, that's risky.
And then he in the morning he told me to go to a school, and this was a school for Manis, and they're just teaching in pure Arabic, and I'm just sitting there and I can't understand anything that's going on. But subhanAllah, let me tell you, when you're really hungry and you want food, you'll open up the dictionary if you have to, and you'll look up the word, and you'll find out it's ta'am. And once you do that, you're never going to forget that food is ta'am, right? So
exactly.
Yeah. So you start picking up words here and there out of necessity, And then I just spent just 10 days, to be honest, with real immersion. Yeah, and it was a short holiday, but in those 10 days. I really got the confidence to speak Arabic, because before that I was just learning from the books. And, once you speak and, get that practice, it all comes together. And immersion really helps. That's so important. So what are the things that really helped you out in Jordan? What are the things that you did that really helped your Arabic?
Okay. Well, basically, like you said, that immersion, just simply being there, it does you wonders. That's not to say that you can't learn Arabic in a, let's say, a non-Arabic speaking environment. You absolutely can. In fact, I know many people that know Arabic stellar, right? Mm-hmm. And they've studied, like, let's say in the United States, and then they've never left. But I think if you really want to learn the nuances of a language, and you really kind of have to go overseas at some point, even if it's for a brief period of time, if you can afford an extended period of time, I would absolutely recommend that. But the immersion is priceless, because, like I said, you pick up on the nuances of the spoken language. And, when you read a word in a book, you pick up one way to use it, in that syntax. But when it's actually spoken, it might be a bit differently, right? And so I think that immersion, but without that immersion, it would be hard for you to get. That's not to say you can't learn Arabic in a, a non-Arabic speaking environment, but the immersion puts you over the top, I think. So.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you're planning holidays, why not make it a holiday where you have fun and at the same time get a lot of practice learning Arabic? That would work out. So how is it?
But the problem with that is it's hard enough to get Muslims in the West to even go overseas to study Arabic, and then because they don't associate it with a holiday, they associate it with a task. And so to say that it's fun to study Arabic is a bit difficult. So yeah.
But how is it for someone who is looking to go overseas? Would you recommend Jordan as a good option?
In the past, let's wind back the clock a bit to the 90s. Western Muslims at that time would study in Yemen, Syria, in Egypt, but unfortunately these places are kind of no-go zones now because of the wars, obviously, in Syria and Yemen. Allah make it easy on them and leave them with their pain. But Egypt is still an option, but it's a bit cheaper. But we'll focus specifically on Jordan. After the wars, many of the people, many of the students of knowledge from surrounding countries, specifically these ones that were war-torn, fled to Jordan. And so in a strange way, the ilm that was actually in Yemen and Syria, for example, and even in Egypt, kind of made its way to Jordan. And so while Jordan was kind of a barren, and that's not to say that as an insult, it was never considered like a bastion of knowledge in the past. In a way, it has become that now. So we're now seeing all these ulama going to this country and establishing themselves, making their Arabic schools or their any Islamic schools or what have you, and they're actually teaching there. So I think it is actually becoming more of a place to study Islam and Arabic now than it was, let's say, 10 years ago. Maybe for unfortunate reasons because of the war, but this hikmah behind whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does, and now He's turned Jordan into this kind of garden. But there are some caveats here. One is that Jordan's quite expensive. This is kind of ma'ruf in that, for example, their dinar is stronger than our US dollar. So really? Going there is quite it is. So $1 is 70 qurush, 70 cents about. So, which doesn't get you very far in Jordan. But if you can afford it, you can kind of live frugally when you're there. You'll figure it out once you go. I would recommend Jordan, but I would say the biggest kind of deterrent is the price, not the ilm, because the ilm is there now. The Arabic has always been there, but the biggest thing is the deterrent. The people are lovely. The environment is itself quite conducive, and now, like I said, there's many, even Western students studying there, so there is a community, which I think is absolutely essential, because as a Westerner who's been overseas to multiple Muslim countries, I found that simply being amongst Western Muslims who share the same struggles that I do, or the same first language that I do, which is English, that does you wonders, because when you're studying alone in isolation, it becomes quite difficult. But when you have those people with you to constantly kind of back you up and support you, that does you absolute wonders.
MashaAllah. Okay, let's say someone wants to go to Jordan to learn Arabic. How do you recommend they go about this? Do they enroll in a language school, or do they just make the journey and look for a madrasa there? How did you do it, and how would you recommend someone goes about it?
Okay, well, I guess the way I went about it was when I began to realize, okay, I need to go overseas. I've plateaued in the U.S. in terms of my studies. I need to go find a new place. I just began to research online, and I found this institute called Qasid. It's very famous in the West, actually. Many non-Muslims even study there. And so I did some research, and I found a friend of mine who was from Ohio State, who had graduated, was also there. So I contacted him, asked him for some information, and he told me about it. And then I just applied, and I went there. So I guess I would say to Muslims who are interested, you probably do know someone who's actually gone overseas. He may not be in your immediate circle, but if you reach out and you ask around, you can totally find someone from your community, ask them for assistance. Even if they're not in that country, like Faraz, my friend, was in Jordan at that time, and so I could kind of ask him for help. But let's say no one is there, but a guy that's been there, you can even ask them. And once you get there, like I said, especially in Jordan, you'll find that community that you can kind of ask for even more help. Because once I arrived, I met all these other Westerners that were telling me about which school I can go to, what person I can study with, what I can do in my free time to kind of improve my Arabic. So I would say to Westerners that want to go, or any Muslim in general that wants to go overseas, just do your own research and then try and find someone that's been there. Yeah. Okay. So
that's very helpful. And you would recommend this institute, Qasid?
I would recommend it. The way Qasid is kind of broken down is that you have two tracks of study, two modes of study. You have the modern standard Arabic track, and then you have the classical Arabic track.
Okay.
Modern standard Arabic is normally for non-Muslims. They're coming over from a Western university and they want university credits, and so they'll go there.
Okay.
But there are also more, religious-minded Muslims that, like myself, that wanted to learn Arabic, but didn't want to do MSA. We wanted to do just something more related to Quran and Sunnah. And so we went to the classical Arabic track, which deals with, Quranic texts, it deals with hadith, and it deals with, in later levels, books of fiqh, so on and so forth. And so I would say that, overall my experience at Qasid was good. Again, it's quite pricey because just the standard of living in Jordan is quite high. But if you can kind of, bear that burden, you should be fine. In fact, Qasid is quite generous with regards to its scholarships. Maybe when you first apply, you'll kind of have to shell out quite a bit of money, but once you're there and they get to know you, if you apply, they're more than willing to give you that money. Actually, the founder of the school, they're two American Indian Muslims.
Oh, really?
Right. And so, they're actually, mashallah, quite good shuyukh as well.
Mashallah.
And so you can actually study with them, or one of them, his name is Umar Matadar. He teaches Maliki fiqh, for example. And so he runs the school, but he also lives right by the school, so many students would go afterwards and just simply sit with him and learn. And so that you can find that nice Islamic environment for yourself and find Western Muslims, but like I said, it's a bit pricey, but maybe you can get some scholarship money after a bit.
MashaAllah.
Yeah.
How different is Jordanian Arabic to Fusha? Is it something like Egyptian, where it sounds like almost a different language?
No, it's not that bad. Jordanian Arabic, I think, is more manageable, the colloquial Arabic anyway. But what I tell people, ask me this all the time. They're like, when I go overseas, I just want to learn Fusha. I don't want to learn any of these kind of spoken dialects. But I tell them, look, regardless of where you go, you're going to have to learn a spoken dialect because the language you learn in the classroom will not be applicable 100% on the street.
Yeah.
Now, with that being said, there are certain countries whose local dialect is far closer to, let's say, Fusha than others. So, for example, Moroccan dialect is quite ma'ruf for its distance from Fusha, and so is Egyptian dialect. But Shami dialect in general is quite close. I think it's quite discernible, and so the leap from Fusha to Shami dialect is not so bad. And so I didn't really have too much of a problem. In fact, at Qasid, they actually facilitate your like colloquial learning. They'll teach you for free at first, and if you want to learn a bit extra, maybe you can pay for that. Or simply you can just hang out with guys on the street. They're more than willing to talk with Westerners. I think it's quite interesting that we would leave the comforts of the West to go live over there. And so they want to talk to you, and so you can totally practice with them. So, yeah.
MashaAllah. And, I think if you learn Fusha, I think it's very easy to understand and learn the other dialects if you wanted to. Because you have a very good basis in your grammar, and you have the vocabulary which is going to be more or less the same. The dialects will have foreign words with respect to classical Arabic, but you can understand those words from the context. You can communicate basically if your Fusha is good. And most Arabs, they understand Fusha because the television news is in Fusha, all the written material is in Fusha. So learning Fusha is a very good place to start, even if you're learning Arabic for your business or for your communication. Would you agree with that, Sheikh Bilal?
Not completely, if I may disagree.
Sure.
That, I'm allowed to disagree here, okay? For open conversation.
Yeah.
I
won't disconnect
for
the call.
Example, okay. I think you're right to a certain extent in that that people will understand Fusha, but I think that depends on the audience you're talking to. So, for example, if I'm talking to Shabab, who might have dropped out of school, he smokes cigarettes, he's driving a rickshaw or a tuk-tuk, he's probably not going to understand Fusha. But if I meet someone who's like in their 20s, maybe college educated, or even if he finished high school, he'll understand it. But even then, when you first speak Fusha to him, it'll shock him that you're speaking Fusha. And then also your accent, because we have accents when we speak Arabic, it will also shock them. So you might have to repeat yourself, but you can get your point across. But I think, like I said, it might require some repetition, and also it depends on who you're talking to. But yeah, that's my 2 cents there.
Yeah, and in my experience, a lot of people, they're embarrassed to talk Fusha. But the reality is, when Arabs see someone who's learned Fusha and they're talking in Fusha, they really respect that. And if they can't communicate with you in Fusha, that is really embarrassing for them, because a lot of Arabs, they see Fusha as the true pure Arabic, which it rightly is. It's just the language of the Quran. So, speaking Fusha is not something you should ever be embarrassed about. But as you said, when you go to a shop or you speak to an old person, for example, you need some Ammiya. That's true. That's very true. So, Sheikh Bilal, anything you want to add in conclusion?
Ahead,
I think, we had, we got some very good points from you and very helpful tips, especially for someone who's considering traveling abroad to learn Arabic. And Jordan seems to be a very good choice. And so, in conclusion, I'll let you say something and we'll wrap it up, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
Okay, so if I could address the audience, I guess, if there's anyone out there that is, genuinely interested in learning Arabic or just increasing their knowledge of Islam generally, I have to say that it's not always the easiest path, and you may not see the payoffs immediately, but ultimately you always have to remind yourself that you're doing it to become closer to God. And I would say that you always have to remind yourself that, because you'll see maybe people taking different directions in life, and they'll be achieving other things, maybe more dunya-oriented things, but you always have to orient yourself and remember that this life is not for this life, actually, it's for the akhirah, and we study the ilm to get a higher makan in the next life. And so I would say that never lose hope, because it can be quite difficult when you're studying overseas. It's not easy, especially like Westerners, when you're going over for the first time, completely different life. But never lose hope, always endeavor, and always remember your end goal. And that's kind of what I want to end it on. Thank you for having me, and assalamu alaikum.
That was beautiful. Jazakallah khair. That was so beneficial, and thank you so much, Sheikh Bilal. So there you have it, and we will see you on the next episode. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
You have just listened to the Arabic Qahwa podcast. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or Google Play. Please take a moment to leave a review. Thank you for listening.